So our next session is Translanguaging Pedagogies in TESOL. The head moderator is Grace Kim with Zhenjie, Yizhe, and Yuseva. A little bit about them. You can read here a little bit about Grace, who's coming to us from the United States, I think. And we've got China, Zhenjie, and Yizhe, who's coming to us from the United States. Yuseva, who's also at Ohio State University. So ladies, if you're here, feel free to start. Thank you everyone for joining us for day 2.
Thank you. Would you mind allowing me to share screen? Somehow I keep getting the message saying that it's disabled for me.
Try now,
to share.
because I'm not screen sharing anymore.
Yeah, I still get the message saying host disabled.
Okay, try again.
Maybe she needs to be co-host, I'm not sure.
Try again. Can you do it now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
I enabled multiple sharing, so that was the issue.
Thanks, Krista.
No, it doesn't work. It didn't work yesterday in any case. Okay.
So can you see the slide?
Yes.
Grace,
All
you can
right,
see
perfect.
your screen. Perfect.
Thank you. Great. All right. I'm going to move it a little bit to readjust. So thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. So my name is Grace Kim. Today I'm with Zhenjie, Yizhe, who are my co-moderators, and Yuseva currently is in a conference, and she's been trying really hard to connect, but it seems like she's having technical difficulties. She's been moving around from different rooms to another room to be able to connect. So we'll see whether she can join, fingers crossed, but if not, Yizhe and Zhenjie are here joining us. So we'll go over our session, and we are more than happy and pleased to be able to talk about our session today. So this was our first year doing this session on translanguaging pedagogies in TESOL, and we had really good outcome and a lot of positive comments. And so we're very excited to have such outcome in our first year of launching this. So the objectives of our session was to provide an introductory workshop, knowing that for some teachers, this may be a new concept. So we wanted to make it more welcoming for a lot of people who may not have had any familiarity with translanguaging pedagogies, especially situated with the TESOL context. And we wanted to use this time to talk about and discuss different ways to implement translanguaging strategies in diverse classrooms located internationally. And as part of that, we also incorporated this part into our session, which is to develop a lesson plan or an activity by the participants so that they can actually have a product by the end of this session. And in the process during the time of the session, be able to get feedback from us, the moderators, and also other participants. And this idea came out from our conversation with the EVO mentors and coordinators, which I think it worked really well. So it was a great teamwork, and I appreciated the idea that we got when we were developing this session. So the general idea of how the session was and the participants, we had over 112 participants registered to our session, which was mainly done in Canvas for Teachers. And we had a great attendance from different countries, over 20 different countries, including Indonesia, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Poland, Sri Lanka, Peru, Paraguay, Australia, Spain, Greece, and Cyprus. And then we also had participants representing diverse teaching backgrounds and contexts. And so we had participants teaching in ESL context, EFL context, in K-12 settings in wide grade levels, as well as those who were teacher educators, those who were in grad level pursuing graduate studies, and then also who were university level instructors. And the requirement to get certificate in our session was to complete all the required readings and also post in the discussion post and respond to each other's posts in Canvas. And then also the participants had to complete posting a lesson plan or an activity that they created and also provide feedback to each other. Once they received feedback from us and from other participants, they had to revise it and submit a revised lesson plan or an activity. And those who completed all of those components were the ones who received the certificate. And in total, we had 15 participants who completed all the required work. Our goal was to first have this as an opportunity for the participants to have a deeper understanding of translanguaging pedagogies, and then also familiarize with the current research on pedagogical translanguaging in TESOL context by engaging in different readings, as well as we posted some of the videos on translanguaging pedagogies in TESOL that were available on YouTube so that the participants can actually see translanguaging pedagogies in action in different classrooms. And so those were some of the required materials that the participants had to engage in, and also design and develop a lesson plan, and then evaluate appropriate resources for implementing translanguaging pedagogies within their own teaching context or administrative responsibilities if that applies to them. All right, so we started first by having this time to familiarize ourselves with the framework called translanguaging and what that looks like in TESOL field. And then also we narrowed it down starting from week 2 to something called the 3 strands of translanguaging, which were the translanguaging stance, design, and shift. And intentionally we put shift in parentheses because it's more of that agentive moment-by-moment decision-making that the teachers make within their own classrooms in order to create more of this culturally and linguistically relevant environments that invites as well as welcomes the full linguistic and cultural repertoires of the students. And so we thought having this time to reflect on our own stances, which are the ideological beliefs, and then be able to intentionally design and create lesson plan is something that we can do in advance during our time. So we wanted to focus more on the first 2. So in week 3, we focused on translanguaging design, in which the participants started to develop their lesson plans. And then in week 4, we discussed some ways that shift may occur in their classrooms, and then what teachers can do or the participants can do in those situations. And then we provided feedback during week 4, and then week 5 was when the participants had to post their revised lesson plans and then discuss, reflect, as well as discuss what they would like to do in the future. All right, so this part initially was what Yuseva was to do, but I'll try my best to cover because I don't think she was able to make it. If I'm sure Yuseva is not here. Right. Okay, so I'll try to cover to the best of my knowledge. And so in our case, the participants had to first work on the weekly modules that were published on the Canvas course page. And again, those modules were published every week, and it consisted of what we call as readings, but within which it also included some videos that were available online in which the participants were able to see different ways that teachers actually taught using or implementing translanguaging pedagogies. And we also shared some of the online resources that are available for teachers and administrators to implement translanguaging pedagogies. And then after engaging in those, we also opened up the space for asynchronous conversations in the discussion boards with prompts and questions, and those were responded by the moderators as well as the participants. And then what was at the center or the core meat of our session was to design and develop a lesson plan or an activity that is actually informed by translanguaging pedagogy. And in so doing, all the moderators, including myself, we provided individualized feedback to each of the participants who posted, and also helped them in their brainstorming of those lesson plans and activities. And we also had weekly synchronous live sessions via Zoom every Saturday. We had a really good number of participants who joined it every week. We had about 20 to 30 regular participants who joined us. And we did diverse activities in those sessions. So we talked about the readings. We also shared our responses and shared the lesson plans and activities. We sometimes looked at some of the lesson plans and then videos that were available online. And we discussed about that in our breakout rooms. And we got really good questions and conversations that initially we thought of doing only for 1 hour, but lasted for 1 hour and 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because of those who stayed after the required session and asked questions and engaged in dialogue to further continue having this conversation about translanguaging and how that looks like in TESOL context. Mainly because a lot of the resources were from the dual language education program. So that left us with this question of, oh, well, how that look like in these sessions or in this context. All right, so I think Yizhe will going to lead us or continue picking up from here and tell us more about the productions of the participants.
So hi everyone, my name is Yizhe. Glad to see you all. So during the 5-week session, our participants actively joined the discussion of assigned readings. Not only did they share the perceptions toward definition, scope, application of pedagogical translanguaging, the connection between these practical examples provided in the readings and also their real teaching context. They have also shared that many challenges they faced while implementing pedagogical translanguaging. Before this session, many of our participants believed that translanguaging was just translating or using mother tongue. And now they have deeper insight into this topic, realizing that it connects with multimodality and also social justice. So, and there are many EFL teachers sharing that beyond the classroom, their students have limited access to English. So this posed hurdles for them to implementing translanguaging. They also face the pressure from other teachers, parents, schools, and policymakers who believe that using mother tongue or other language would impede the students' acquisition of English language. So these issues have raised fierce discussion both in our online synchronous meeting and also the offline discussion. The most remarkable outcome is that our participants have developed wonderful lesson plans during the 5-week. As Grace mentioned before, that we have participants from many different countries and regions, from elementary school, secondary school, tertiary level, and even the graduate students education program. So I remember that we have an elementary English teacher in Greece. In her lesson plan, she invited students to collect pictures of Greek endangered animals, as well as the name of them, either in English or in Greek, and then share it to the whole class. This is very engaging for students in elementary school. We have an ESL instructor who invited the students to use whatever language they want to build a concept map to pave the way for their academic writing. And we also have many educators in TESOL programs of graduate school, and one of them decided to introduce the knowledge and concept of translanguaging to the pre-service teachers, asking them to be aware of the phenomenon of translanguaging during the fieldwork observation and student teaching, and then further translate this knowledge into the real teaching practice. So these are all very interesting things we've observed. and very engaging cases. We also provide opportunities for them to share these examples within group of similar teaching context or interest, and then obtain feedbacks from each other. So we also have learned a lot from our participants. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Yizhe. Hello, everyone. I'm Zhenjie. For this EVO session, even though it's our first time doing this, we had a very good outcome, and a lot of participants sharing that they learned a lot from us and they enjoyed this lesson plan activity. They might try it out in their own class. Throughout these 5 weeks, there are several lessons we learned that we think might better help us to further improve it in next year. Among those lessons, we listed some of those here, as you can see in the slide. First of all, regarding the content, many teacher participants, they raised the questions about the differences between translation, which they used so often in the classroom as their one of the pedagogies to help students understand certain concepts, for instance. But at the same time, they got confused with these differences between translation and translanguaging as pedagogies. They also raised questions like, what's the differences between code switching and translanguaging, which was very confusing to many teacher participants or teacher educators who didn't know this translanguaging concepts in the past. We tried and added many sources on Canvas to help them better understand those differences. So we think in the future, we can talk more on those differences in both the asynchronous sessions and live session. Also, as Grace and Yizhe mentioned, we had many participants from EFL contexts, and they were very eager to know more about how translanguage pedagogies can be applied in their specific context. Even though translanguaging has been a trend in the field, a lot of the research examples were actually based upon bilingual context. So we were thinking about when we do this in the next year, we might consider look for more examples and research studies from EFL context, so our teacher participants could learn more from those studies and think about how they can implement translanguaging in their specific context. And also, we found that actually a lot of our participants were also interested in conducting research on this topic, translanguaging. So in the future, we were thinking about providing extra resources on Canvas to meet this group of teachers' needs. Regarding the live session structure, we had a 1-hour live session for brief lectures and also breakout room discussions. But actually, many of the participants, they were so enthusiastic in discussing, the questions, and some of them requested longer time, longer live session time, possibly 1.5 hours, and for more discussion time. So we might consider to extend our live session and add more discussion opportunities in the future.
We are 1 minute into Q&A. So could you wrap up, please?
Yes. So I think that's all for the lessons we learned. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Zhenjie. Thank you, Yizhe, and thank you everyone for listening. And we welcome all your comments and questions.
And again, I want to wrap up by stating that it was a really wonderful opportunity to engage with the participants who come from so many different backgrounds, and that helped us to revisit our knowledge and the questions that we had about translanguaging, and the conversations were very enthusiastic and a lot of creative ideas. So we really learned a lot from the participants as well. Now going to
Thank you for offering this session. It was a new one, and I'm glad to hear that it went so well. So we can entertain questions.
I would like to ask a question, Grace and the team. Did they understand well that you plan to include mentoring research on the topic next year as part of your session? Include that part, or did I misunderstand you?
So we had a lot of teacher participants. They expressed their willingness to learn more about how to do research on this topic.
Okay.
For the sake of time, we might not have sufficient time to go over how to do the research, but we would like to add more resources, like articles on this for their use. Yeah,
that's
Grace,
great.
Great to share. Yeah,
that's a great idea too. Thank you.
Yeah, and we realized that there were some participants who were, at least this past session, who were doing their master's or PhD studies and were interested to see how translanguaging may be incorporated into their studies. So we realized that lesson plans, in case of the lesson plan component, they came up with this question of how that may look like within their context in which they were in. And so that led us to think about some different ways to tweak it so that others who are in different situation or role or context may still be able to have some type of a product that is more relevant to them. But at the same time, we got a lot of positive comments about this lesson plan component, because that actually helped them to take a step beyond just talking about translanguaging, but really think about, wait a minute, how does that actually look like in classroom? And then be able to get feedback from all of us, because in our breakout room session, we grouped the participants once according to the teaching context, as in ESL, EFL, and the languages backgrounds. And then also another time we grouped them according to the grade level. So there was this kind of a community of shared experiences from which they got feedback and brainstormed and shared ideas about their lesson plans, because that was one of the components that they had to go over in their breakout room sessions.
Thank you, Grace.
You're welcome.